Hey there, fellowship family. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all things church life. I'm Mark Francis, and I'm once again your host for today. We have special guests with us once again, just like last week, and I call them global church partners because we partner together in the ministry. We don't consider you missionaries as much, but as we've been having these conversations over the last several weeks about overflow, it's exciting for us as a fellowship Bible church family to feel like that we are connected to a global church, a global body of Christ that is not just isolated in one community. So we're excited to get a chance to hear from Zacheus and Gloria Chemeltoris. Did I get that last name right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Gloria. Hey, Zacheus. How are you?
Hey.
Fine.
And we also have our missions pastor, Scott McManigle, with us. How are you, Scott?
Good. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we want to get a chance to get to know you guys. But, Scott, I want to hear from you of where did we get involved originally with Pokot? Because this is in Kenya,
Right.
where Zacheus and Gloria are from.
Mhm.
So give us a quick background and history of our connections here with Zacheus and Gloria.
Yeah, it started with a connection with Julius Mergor. Julius was one of the first, or the first Pokot believer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure how he got here, but he came to this area and became a student at Washington Bible College and seminary, and that's where FBC came in contact with Julius. Exactly who introduced Julius to FBC at that time, I'm not really sure. But Julius, a partnership began. Then Julius went back, and Julius was a great evangelist. He was really good at evangelizing, and very quickly the gospel spread, and there were lots and lots of believers, and very quickly the Pokot church became what we would describe as a mile wide and an inch deep, and so as the missions committee would, spend time with Julius, ask him what the needs were. He said it was leaders, and so that kind of set the church on the kind of a quest of helping them to develop leaders. And so for many years, my dad and Mike Thomas, my dad who was the missions
Tim
director
McManigle.
back then,
Yep.
Mike Thomas, Scott Newland, all the others that were on the missions committee at the time would make trips over to Kisumu, and they would get the Pokot leaders and Philip and the leaders from his church together, and for these conferences and Bible studies that we continue to do. And they did that for a number of years, and after a time, the Pokot team put together a translation team where they began to translate our chronological lessons into the Pokot language. And then around 2005, 2006, I came along, moved here, became a part of the program, and then I began making trips over there with my dad. And so for the first couple years, we continued to meet that way. But as we would meet together, and I would talk to Zacheus and David and James at the time and ask more questions about the Pokot work, realized, Philip was leading one church, but the Pokot guys are trying to equip pastors and church leaders at that time of over 100 churches, very spread out. And so pretty soon we realized, we need to separate these two works, and we need to meet specifically with Zacheus, James, and David, and just talk strategy, for this work, because it's so big and it's so vast. And
so you mentioned a couple of names. Philip was somebody we were partnered with,
right?
And now you're saying Zacheus, David, and James. Dave Cassiton, James Lamaramuk.
Yeah.
And so it's really a partnership of those you three guys.
Yeah,
along
they're
with wives.
They're the main translation team, and then the ones that take the lessons that have been translated out to all the areas where all the other Pokot leaders reside and pass it on to them.
So Zacheus, I'll turn to you. I mean, it sounds like a big undertaking to attempt to just teach throughout this entire Pokot region. I mean, share with me the size, like in miles or kilometers. First of all, where is Pokot? Because we got to hear like where this is in the world, and then how big of a region are you really traveling to teach to the churches?
Okay, thank you, Mark, and the FBC brethren. It's, first of all, a real blessing and fellowship to be a part of Fellowship Bible Church community, in as much as we are further away, but we regard ourselves as part of this fellowship.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate the prayers and encouragement we receive every time through the communications we get from the leadership teams, especially the missions team led by Scott, Jim, and the rest of the guys who we get an opportunity to communicate. Pokot is, first of all, in Kenya and the northwestern part of Kenya. And like Scott has already mentioned, this is such a wide area. If we have to calculate, it's slightly over 500 square miles.
Okay.
In that's the service area, and it ranges from East Pokot, which is closer to Nairobi. It's like the farthest of East Pokot is like 5 or 4 hours drive from Nairobi northwards, and that is close to a location called Maralal in Nanyuki, northern part of Nairobi, and it stretches over to Kapenguria and further into the north and into Uganda, where we currently have over 30 churches and still stretching.
So 30 churches in Uganda.
Yes.
And then how many churches in the Pokot region?
In we call it West Pokot.
Okay.
West Pokot is currently having churches close to 300.
Wow.
And I've not included now some new preaching points, which we've not regarded them as churches because we have like 20, 30 people meeting in the course of the week just because of the small number of leadership teams whom we have. So we have decided that on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, at least in each preaching point, we have lessons and teachings going on so that on Sundays when there will be nobody, they can continue with their worship service and reflecting on what they were taught.
So of those 300 churches, you mentioned maybe sometimes there might be 20, 25 people. On average, how many people are in each of these churches?
Yeah, the least church is about 30 people.
30, okay.
And most of these churches stretch to over 100 people.
Wow.
So it's the radii or the distance between one church to another is about between 5 to 7 miles. Those are the closest churches.
So when you were traveling, you mentioned also David and James. So the 3 of you are essentially traveling around on any given day trying to meet with the different churches. What is the leadership of those churches like? Because you said that when you're not there, when others aren't there, they have lessons. They're going to be working together and meeting together. How often do those churches meet and gather without you?
All these churches meet every week.
Okay.
And like Scott mentioned earlier on, the challenge with the Pokot church has always been something to do with the leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
And over 80% of the Pokot community is uneducated. That is, they don't have a formal education. And this became the greatest challenge in doing these trainings. But we are so grateful to God because one of the greatest spiritual miracles I usually regard with the Pokot church is that the men in all these areas in Uganda, in North Pokot, in East Pokot, never went to any literacy education. But fortunately, God opened their spiritual sights when they trusted Christ as their Savior, and also opened their physical sights such that you give them a Pokot Bible, the translated lessons in Pokot, these men whom we've picked up as key leaders could read and explain what the Bible says, and this has been a real motivation, and it's helped us so much to ensure that with the lessons available, somebody would be in that locality, preaching point, reading and explaining what the message of the cross is all about.
That is a work of God. I mean, knowing that uneducated people are now coming to Christ and are able to learn about him through his word and digging deeper with the lessons, the knowing God lessons. Sure. We heard from Juan and Tirsa last week. We've also shared, numerous times over the last couple of weeks what those lessons are of taking scripture and teaching it systematically, right? And we're talking 3,000-4,000 people at least that there is a reach with just the three of you guys. Gloria, I want to hear from you. You can't just be the pretty face up here that doesn't say anything. So how do you partner with Zacheus? Do you travel with him? Do you stay home? What's your role in the ministry there?
Okay, thank you. My role in the ministry there is to prepare Zacheus, what he needs, what he has to go with, if I'm not going with him. If he's going to where roads are not good, that's not good for my back.
Right.
But if he is going to where the roads are good and reachable, I go with him.
Okay. And you say bad roads. I've got to imagine, Scott, I know you've been there. I haven't yet, but roads are bad.
Yeah. He can explain.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your back. So I know that you have ongoing back problems. It's something we can definitely pray for. And the traveling, how does the traveling take place? Like, how does Zacheus go from place to place? Do you have car? Do you have bike?
No, they hire trucks, and when they're going to places where they cannot use a truck, they use a motorcycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you guys determine, because again, we're talking about three of you guys, how do you split up where you travel on a regular basis? Do you guys meet together as a team? Do you see each other in person regularly?
Okay, yes, we meet once at least in a week, but it depends with where the locations that we go, because we got locations which will require us spending like 3-4 days. Because we have to pull these guys, especially when we go further north and into Uganda and maybe East Pokot. It's quite a drive. It's like a whole day drive. And so we prefer spending 2 days of traveling and maybe 2 days of teaching, because that would mean that we may not see these guys like in a month or so.
Okay.
So
right.
At times we meet, like give ourselves calls and plan together, depending with the schedules which some guys have. Somebody could be committed with other tasks. So with two of us or one of us plus two more Timothys, because we've done it because most of the time we prefer using a truck.
Okay.
So that we can expose these other guys we are nurturing on what ought to be done, because even at our absentia or when 2 or 3 teachings come up together, we need to have guys who can sit in on our behalf. We also have at times when we got issues which need to be handled in certain localities, and maybe a training could have been planned in one of the other areas, and so somebody should be there. So we prefer at least going, if not 4, it's 5 of us, so that these other guys can learn and see, because this is not our church, it's God's church, and all of us are servants. We need to keep doing, and with now many more points and locations opening up, we really trust God that we have more people who can be sent so that this can be done.
It's great. The concept of leadership development is that you are building people. I mean, Scott, since you've been a part of this, how have you seen the leaders grow with the Pokot Church?
Yeah, very much so. Like we described last week in our message when Jim and I were speaking. Just where the pastors that they've been working with, where they were at when they began, just very confused in the faith, very confused about things, to where they can actually now turn around and progressively, foundationally begin to unfold God's word for people and establish others in the faith. And not only have they become more established in the faith, now they can begin to establish other people in the faith. And that's been super exciting to hear about and to see grow. To
start from one believer, Julius Mergor, to then spread the gospel around to now thousands of believers.
They can attest too. It's gone into other people groups. They're
neat.
So the Pokot are surrounded by a couple other people groups. Well, they've got good relationships with some of the leaders of like the Sangwer churches or the Mariquette churches, and they would have a conference, invite Zacheus or David or to come and speak. They hear this teaching on grace and the finished work of Christ, and it's like, we've never heard this before. Where'd you get this teaching? So they tell them about the lessons. Well, we want that in our language. And then that starts the process of now, beginning to develop the lessons for these other people groups in their churches. Yeah.
So you're developing people yourself, Zacheus. What does your home church look like in your hometown? Are you developing people there in your home church to also travel with you? Is that my understanding of what's happening? I guess my question is, what does your hometown look like as you're traveling around?
Okay, thank you. One of the key places which personally I've been trusting God to open up is my own locality. Yeah. And we have a group of guys, and I know Scott knows about Jackson, one of the guys whom we sent to continue helping us when we started the Mokoyon Church.
For Mokoyon, yeah.
Yes, so this has been really tremendous and effective because, like in my locality, I can be found like maybe once in a month, and without these guys, key men down here continuing with the lessons, it's been a real encouragement that it was faster because where I grew up was a locality where some guys had been to a Catholic church, Anglican church. These are so many churches, and there was this confusion. And during this week's community group, I was sharing with a couple that I have two groups. There's this group which has so much of, they want certain theology, the prosperity gospel and that. And it was a lot of work to bring them back to the basic knowledge that it has nothing to do with what we are doing.
Yeah.
It has to be God doing everything in us. And this church can't be a church if it's not established by God himself through Christ and by grace alone. And we got this group who were just bandits out there. And when they got into accept Christ, they joined it straight away into the teachings. And it's been a very smooth progression in getting to teach them. Unlike the time we've had to spend on this other group. And this, personally, I take it as a testimony because I can testify, like I was sharing with a group this week, during the Missions Week, that we had, there is this lady who is a member of our church, and one of the days she was talking with his brother who has changed the church 4 times. And she was like, what is the problem? I've been to church, and after 1, 2, 3 years, I'm just exhausted and worn out. I don't get what I'm going to this church. So, and this lady began sharing with him about knowing God and what God has done through grace, and it's all about God. It's not about us. And he was like, what? What do you mean? And she was like, let me connect you with my pastor. And he was like, hurry up, I want to talk with that guy. And so the lady gave me a call, and I told her, let him tell us when he will be available. And so he said, tell him to come on Friday. And so I called Jackson, and we went over. We spent the whole day with this guy, and when we were done, we introduced him to grace and shared about the introductory part of creation to Christ, and reminded him that our Christian faith is God working in us. We have nothing to do. Ours is the only role every human being has is to accept. And once we welcome Christ into our lives, it's God working progressively in our lives. And once we were done, he was like, no, I think you have to come back. And so when we went, the sister called me the following day and told me, no, you know, that guy said you should now be planning to be coming every week, and I'll pull up like 5 households who are his neighbors, and we should be meeting.
That's
So
cool.
it became a testimony to me that it's what we're doing in growing the church is actually it brought me the picture of fellowship Bible Church missions program, in that we establishing the church so that they can be used to reach out to the rest, because
Absolutely.
I would not have maybe gone out doing evangelism to this gentleman, but it was just because of communication with his sister
That story that you're sharing is such an encouragement, because we as a church here are talking about this focus of overflow.
Yes.
And how are we as believers called to pour out God's love to others around us, not just hide it. But you guys are a picture, and that story is a picture of your church, your people overflowing, sharing God's love to other people around them, witnessing, evangelizing, being like, here's the gospel, here's the good news. If you don't see it clearly, let me show you, let me tell you, let me love you in that way, let me pray for you, encourage you. There's so many things that point to just God working in your lives and in your church's lives that is encouraging. And that is in Africa, right? I mean, that is halfway around the world that God is working. And to me, that's a blessing. That's an encouragement to say that we are partners with you guys in a way, and partnering and participating in the gospel together in that overflow capacity. Because we don't hear that story all the time. You know, it's encouraging for us here in Virginia to know that what the work that we're doing with Scott and Jim traveling or connecting with you guys via Zoom, and how we are partners, to know God is doing that. And that's exciting. Gloria, I didn't get a chance to have you finish your thought about, tell us about your family. You know, so as Zacheus is traveling, as he is in this ministry, kids, like, you know, tell us about what goes on in the home.
Okay. When Zacheus goes to Kapenguria and to the preaching points, I stay at home with the kids if I'm not going with him. But if I go with him, we have a nanny called Millicent.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old are they?
Millicent, who is taking care of them, is 23 years. He knows.
And then
Scott knows.
How old are the kids?
We have Lewis, who is 16 years old.
Okay.
He's in boarding school.
Yep.
He's in his second year of high school. Louis, who is 12 years old, 7th grade.
Okay.
He's in boarding school.
Okay.
And then Bethany, who is 5 years. She just started school this year.
Okay.
And then Blessing, who is 2 years and a half.
So
they are now
she'll
with
stay
Millicent.
she'll
the
stay with
two
you.
girls.
Yes. Yes. You have your hands full. So boarding school, where is boarding school relative to where your house is? How far away are they?
It is far away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Louis is in Nandi County.
Okay.
That is, I think, 37 miles from our home.
Wow.
Lewis is in West Pokot, Kapenguria Boys, where we went. Yeah, just around there.
So how often do you get a chance to see them and connect with them?
They go to school for 2 months, 1 month, and then they come home for 3 days.
Okay.
Half term, and then they go back to school for a month, and then they close that term, and they are home like 1 week.
Okay. Okay. And I saw the other day you were talking to Lewis, I think,
Yeah.
on the phone.
Yeah.
So you have connections with him. You were FaceTiming, I think,
Yeah.
the video chat or WhatsApp, something like that.
WhatsApp or a phone call.
Yes. So
With the
technology
teachers, with the
exists. Okay. I just kind of have our listeners understand, paint the picture that, yes, this is Africa, this is Pokot, but you have capabilities of connecting with your family, connecting with people. You guys connect with us here in our missions team as well. So cell towers exist.
Yeah.
Right?
So actually, where they go to school and where we currently stay, because of her back problems, we had to stay in Eldoret, where she's been schooling, and because she sees a physiotherapist twice every week, so it's been better for us to keep staying in Eldoret so that she can. It would be a lot expensive traveling from Kapenguria back, then stay Wednesday, Thursday again, go back and forth. And this has prompted us. In fact, that's why it's changed our plan. We were trusting God to put up a structure. In fact, we had brought the material stones, sand, and all that. But now when we saw the doctor, he told us his back is not good for her to use like a public means of transport because it will hurt the back more because of the driving style as well as the bumpy roads. So they told us if it is possible, it's good for you to find her a car so that she can drive on. And this tended to shift our priorities because to me, I can bump on a motorcycle and anything, I got no problem. But for her, when I'm with her, I have to find a truck and we have to travel ahead of time so that we can drive slowly on those. So this did change most of our priorities in as far as how we have to settle and all this.
Well, that sounds like a base prayer request.
Sure.
To continue to pray for Gloria for your back.
Yes.
For just doing life, for the pain, just for healing for that. What else can we as Fellowship Bible Church pray for you or partner with you? How can we support you guys over these next coming months and years to come?
Yeah, the major prayer request is that the family would continue putting us in prayer, especially as God is opening up various locations. First of all, as Scott said, we've been working with the Sengwer and we've translated their lessons and they are ongoing. In fact, I was sharing with one of the group's classes this morning that we will be starting with the Marakwet, possibly this January, to do the translations now that we've been meeting with the key leaders for it's now close to 5-6 years. And on the same note, we have the two more groups. We have the Turkana in the north, which have made it impossible for the border between Pokot and Turkana on the north to be a lot accessible because of the fights. In fact, there have been fights recently in that many people have been killed even between Pokot and Marakwet border, and where currently security personnel have been deployed there, and we have had to use phone calls to do teachings with the Marakwet as well as the guys in East Pokot because the government blocked the region. We can't access it. So we have the Turkana, whom we trust in God maybe in the next 3-5 years, as well as one other tribal group in Uganda known as Karamoja, who used to be fighting with Pokot because as the church is opening up, it's going closer to that border. And we really trust God that since God was able to use Pokot, especially to bring peace into Uganda, it's really a great thing that we would also be able to reach to these guys. And this has been a real blessing because it's something which I thank God for, because it was through the church that even when the COVID challenge was in the Kenyan-Ugandan border, the security personnel in Uganda would allow us continue teaching these people, because after many years of trying to do disarmament, they weren't able until the church came up from amongst these people, and that's when they voluntarily now surrendered these guns. And they were like, when there was COVID, they were telling the guys, don't use your mics, but make sure your pastors come and teach. So, wow, and you good. Have to notify us because we want to be a part of the teaching. Yeah. And it was, it's a real, when we talk of overflow, that's how God's love is all about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and as a family, our prayer request is that we are staying with Louis, Bethany, and there's also a girl. In fact, I was told yesterday that she was sent home because of lack of fee. And so she came to our house. And these kids are depending on us. And we're so thankful that the only source of support we have is Fellowship Bible Church. And we really appreciate that, because the prayers and support you guys are doing are really doing tremendous work in supporting us and the ministry in Pokot, so that we can drive and travel every week. Yeah. And so we continue asking for your prayers so that these kids may grow in Christ's grace, as well as open up support so that we can continue supporting them. And also with the aspect of, as I said earlier, we are trusting God to put up a house in the piece of land which we did purchase. Okay. Yes. Neat.
Scott, what kind of final thoughts do you have just to pass on of what God is doing here with Zacheus and Gloria? What else would FBC need to know?
Yeah, it's for me, it's kind of the same as back when I was, still working with the Pokot in Thailand. And I was, in the throes of, teaching and discipling the pastors, who are now the leaders of the church. And, there are times, I would come out of the work, come to Chiang Mai, we'd have meetings, and just, kind of giving the guys an update of where things are at and describing where these, where I thought these guys were at in their faith and their understanding of the truth. And then many times, like, do these guys, are they really where I think they are? Are they really established as I think they are and I'm describing? And then I go back and talk and, just hear this understanding and truth gushing from them, and it's like, yeah, they really are there, they really are established. And it just would become, just so encouraging to me, and just praising the Lord for that. And then, working with these guys, in different places, not only the Pokot guys, but, others that we're working with around the world. And we have meetings and, they give us updates and what's going on. And sometimes it's like, are these churches really, being established? Are these people really established in the faith? Because that's the purpose of all this. Yeah, right. Like if people aren't becoming established in the faith, if churches aren't becoming established in the faith, then we're wasting our time and our money. Sure.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so, to be able to go and visit and see these things happening, meet with these people and hear these truths coming from them, not just someone else telling us what they think these people believe. It's just the same thing. It's neat. It's so encouraging. Yeah. And so it's, these things really are going on. The people that he talked about, Jackson and the church in Mokion, and I've been there multiple times, and many of these churches up in the mountains, and they really are becoming established in the faith, and it's just so encouraging. It's all God.
And what's encouraging to me is that it's not just one church, one location. Just like last week we heard from Juan and Tirso Delgado in Ecuador, the same thing, where Juan is traveling around from place to place to assist establishing multiple churches. Zacheus, you and James and David are traveling. I mean, you were, as Paul says, striving, mightily. And it's just, there's this work that is going on all for God's glory. And it's not just one location, just the exponential growth that happens from just the partnerships around the world and the work that you do. We definitely need to be supporting you and praying for you from that standpoint. But just thank you for being an encouragement to us. And it's exciting for you to be here in person. And Gloria, I know I've talked to you about this before. Your outfits are amazing. For those of you guys watching at home, every day I feel like there's the matching outfit, and what color is it going to be today?
Yep.
So I'll ask you again, how do you do that? I mean, do you guys wake up in the morning and say, okay, this is what we're wearing? Or Gloria, do you just lay out the outfit for Zacheus and say, this is what you're putting on today?
Yeah.
You say yes, because
The night before.
the night before,
Yeah.
you lay out the outfit.
And we is traveling, I love to take the trouser, fold the shirt, and then put in between
Okay.
so that it can be smart always.
Mark, before we got married, I think Scott can be a
knows
witness.
how he was.
And Mike Thomas made the same comment yesterday. Wow, I can say I'm really thankful to God because of her.
Yes.
Because, wow, it's amazing. She's brought all the change in me.
Besides God, yes.
Doesn't Erica dress you to match her every day?
She tries.
Okay.
But no. And, there's something about maybe it's like the older you get together, it's kind of there's just the head knowledge of, okay, I think I know what's happening. Every now and then we will wake up and we'll be wearing very similar colors, and I'm like, okay, we're married, I guess. That's the point that it's gotten to. But to have Gloria pick out my outfit and lay it out, that's next level. I love it. I appreciate it because
Thank you.
you're a good woman. So
Thank you.
well, as we're wrapping up this segment, we've had 2 weeks in a row where we've gotten a chance to listen to our global church partners. And it's encouraging for us as FBC to know that we can overflow and pour out God's love, not just in our family, but in our local church, and then support the global church. And we're going to turn a page even the next couple of weeks to say, how can we do more of like what Zacheus and Gloria are doing and reach out to our community? Because it doesn't just stop there.
Sure.
It's not just about teaching and training believers, but how can we show the love of Christ to those that don't know him? And, we're going to have sermon series about that here with Overflow series. We're going to be talking to people about how that can happen here and participate in our own Winchester area. And you guys are a model of that in Pokot in Kenya. So thank you guys for being a part of it. Scott, thanks for being here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will continue to pray for you guys. So, by the way, the Global Church Week that happened a week ago, you can still go to the website, fbcva.life/Global Church Week. The schedule still exists, and there's all the different recordings of the different sessions, of the teaching times, of the Sunday night time that we had for the Native American forum. So go there, and that'll exist for a good while, so you can stay connected that way. And by the way, if you haven't yet, grab a Global Church prayer calendar for the next 2 years. Every month there's new prayer requests and focus on each leaders. And there's also a brand new brochure that shows who our partnerships are with. So those are in the church lobby. Grab one next time that you're there and be encouraged as our partnerships grow from that standpoint. So thanks for watching and listening, everyone. And until we chat again, let's let Christ be the focus of our lives each and every day.